Hey, what's up, guys? I hope you're enjoying the Be the Difference podcast. If you are, I got a huge favor to ask. Go on to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review for us. It helps us immensely with algorithms and growth because we grow completely by word of mouth, organically. That's why there are no ads. Also, feel free to share this content with somebody you think might get value out of it. Last, if you don't know, I also do coaching to help people become the best version of themselves, starting with physical fitness, going all the way through mindset, sales, and leadership. If you're interested in learning more, there's going to be a link in the description of the podcast. You can schedule a time. It's a free assessment. All I'm going to do is have a conversation with you and see if I can even help you. I look forward to speaking to all of you. Continue to enjoy the podcast, and remember to always be the difference. What's up, everybody? It's Greg with Delta, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. Byron Morrison. Byron.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
It is my pleasure, man. It's my pleasure. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, thanks. We're in the middle of a big podcast tour at the moment. I'm getting to speak to some really incredible people like yourself. So yeah, excited to be here and to share the message.
Yeah, man, I am excited. I love it. I love the people that I come on that are like on podcast tours, because it's just like you're starting to hone your everything so much, and you're just telling it, and I feel like it gets better each time you do it, right? You get so used to saying your message. I love it. For those of you that don't know Byron is the author of Maybe You Should Give Up: 7 Ways to Get Out of Your Own Way and Take Control of Your Life. He's also a mindset high performance coach who has helped CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business leaders in 15 countries become who they need to be to break through to the next level of success. He hails from the UK. Byron, that's awesome.
It's a great introduction there. I need to get you to do that more often for me.
If you want, I can come on your next podcast. I can just introduce you as like hey, I got my introducer here. He's just going to introduce me. And then
I might just put it above my door when I walk into every room and just like hype myself up.
Yeah, I'll introduce you, then I'll just like jump off camera and disappear. I love it. I love it. So, Byron, before we started recording, we were in the backstage, and you were talking about your journey and something that had happened, and how you're using your journey to inspire others to make a change in their life. And I love this topic because I have something similar that happened to me that started me on my journey as well, or my path as well of helping people and coaching as well. And so, why don't you go ahead and start us off and talk about what happened?
Yeah, so it really started a little over 10 years ago. Like, I was at a point in my life where, to be honest, I was not in a good place. I was overweight. I was struggling with confidence. I was burnt out and stuck in a job that was killing me. And I knew I was capable of so much more, but I just felt stuck. And then my dad got cancer. And during his treatment, he had most of his bowel surgically removed. And he spent 25 days in ICU, most down life support and breathing through a tracheostomy. And luckily, he pulled through. It's something I'm eternally grateful for. But that for me was the wake-up call that something had to change. I saw almost like a glimpse of my own mortality and realized how much of my life I was wasting. And I wish I could sit here and say that overnight everything magically got better. I wish I could say that I just suddenly turned it around. But for the next couple of years, I really didn't make much progress. Like, I knew what I needed to do, but I just wasn't doing it. I'd lose some weight, I'd put it back on. I'd make some progress in my career, I'd fall back off track. And I just seemed like I was my own worst enemy. It was only when I started diving into the mindset behind it and the psychology of why I was thinking the way that I did, I realized that the biggest barrier in my way was myself. It was that sabotaging voice that was causing me to overthink, to doubt myself, to avoid putting myself out there. It was only when I learned how to get out of my own head that I could actually take control of my life. And that set me out on a journey over the last decade. I've written 3 best-selling books. My fourth one's about to come out. I've worked with people in 15 different countries. And my focus has been on helping others really get out their own way so that they can get to that next level of success.
Yeah. And I love that. I love this concept. Okay. And here's why. So if you look at any story, right, there's four archetypal characters. In every story, you have a victim, a villain, a hero, and a guide, right? And in your story, you identified a victim, a hero, and a guide. And you probably have been a villain at times, right? And so if you look at victim is like, I'm not happy where I'm at. I can't do anything about it. Complain, complain, complain. Poor me, woe is me. And a lot of people are in the victim mentality, right?
Yeah.
Now the villain and the hero, they have the same origin story. Something painful happened to them. They just have two different decisions, right? The villain ends up saying, this bad thing happened to me. I'm gonna pay this person back. Or I'm gonna pay the world back, right? I'm gonna take revenge, right? Whereas the hero says, this bad thing happened to me. I hit rock bottom. I'm going to get out, but I'm also going to find a way to prevent other people from falling and having the same exact issue. And then the guide is the person that's been the hero before for a long time. And they're basically helping other people, other heroes on their journey. And they're helping them, kind of shepherding them along, you know. And so, and especially in my life, that's what I realized is that I had been all four, right? I had been the victim. Something bad had happened to me. I was like, oh, this sucks, poor me. And like the negative self-talk, the complaining about my situation, this, that, the other. But even something small is like with the villain is like, hey, someone cuts you off in traffic, and then you're like, this motherfucker. Well, like you're like trying to like cut them off back and like or like honk your horn and flip them off, you know. But that's, I mean, it doesn't have to be in the. It's not like an evil villain that's like looking to take over the world. It's just like, dude, you something happened bad to you, and you're like, I'm gonna pay this person back because that wasn't right.
I
You
would
know?
actually argue that I was the villain in my story in another sense of getting in my own way. So
Yeah,
it's like I would skip the gym and talk myself out of it. That I was too tired. I'd
yeah,
binge eat food because I convinced myself I was stressed. I'd sabotage relationships because I didn't feel I was worthy. So it
yeah,
wasn't so much about getting back at other people. It was more just getting back at myself.
yeah,
And yeah. The reason why I love like my transformation story is I was talking to a PR agency recently and I told the guy what happened and everything I went through. And he was there, he sat there and was like, that's great, but I've heard more inspiring stories. I'm like, that's the exact point. Like, I'm not one of those stories that you hear and you're like, oh, that's incredible, but I could never do that. I'm
yeah.
someone who was a normal guy who knew he was capable of something more and he put himself in a situation to change it. And that's why I believe if I can do it, anyone listening to this who feels stuck right now can do exactly the same thing. Like this is not one of those stories where you're just like, oh my God, I can't even fathom doing that.
Yeah.
It's just making a decision that, you know what, you want to turn your life around, you're going to start showing up to make it happen.
It's still extraordinary, but it's making the extraordinary more ordinary to where people look at it
Yeah.
and they're like, yeah, you know what? If Byron can do it, I think I can too. And that's the point, right? Because now you've taken on the role of guide and you're helping other people be the heroes in their journey, right? And you're helping other people to make those changes and to inspire others, which is a ripple effect, right? So every person that you coach in all the different countries you coached and you've helped them on their journey, they are now doing the same thing. They're making those changes. They're creating those ripple effects that are impacting the lives of the people that they touch, and so on and so forth. And that ripple effect continues. And I feel like there's a moment of self realization, right? It's almost like there's a moment where you either hit rock bottom, or you just come to the conclusion. You're like, this is not working. I've got to do something else. And that's where you flip from like the victim villain mindset into starting to become the hero. And I think that that's the challenge is getting people to flip that switch and have that moment of self-realization where they identify differently in
Yeah.
their mind.
The interesting thing on that for me, though, is if you look at a lot of people and the turning point in their life, it's normally some catastrophic event. they
Yeah.
either get sick, something happens to a member of their family, they have a near death experience. And that's why all of a sudden, overnight, they change their ways. We see other people on the other side of it and they just dabble in things. Like they'll start dieting, but then they'll quit because it's too hard. They'll start working on the business, but it's too tough. So they'll throw in the towel. And that's why anyone needs to listen to this. Like the world around you is going to be changing anyway. So you've got to make a decision. Do you want to be in control of that change, or do you want to make it actually happen for you? Because you can make a choice right now. Like you don't have to be pushed to that extreme. Like I was at a breaking point for me that something had to change. Like I remember I actually went for lunch with my parents on my birthday. And at this point, I was in a job that like every single day was just this battle to get out of bed. And they just took me, and for lunch, I just started breaking down, crying at the table. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And that for me was just like, I finally shared it and said it out loud. And I was like, I had to change.
Mhm.
But I wish that people listening to us right now don't let yourself get to that.
Yeah.
Just recognize and like at the end of the day, what you tolerate, you cannot change. And in my new book, I talk about like the worst type of pain is not like some near death experience. It's not like some big thing that's incredibly painful, or like losing your marriage or your relationship. Like the worst type of pain is chronic pain. It's like that bad back where it hurts, but it's not bad enough that forces you to do something about it. And that's why you have to recognize if something is really weighing you down, you have to make a decision to do something different. Because if you don't, you're going to spend the next 30 years tolerating it.
No, you're absolutely right. I love that statement. What you tolerate, you cannot change. And you're absolutely right. And that's I think that's the question. This is more. I want to get into like a philosophical conversation with you here, because that's the challenge that I have is that I hit rock bottom too. Like I hit a really low rock bottom to where I was suicidal, and I was near. I was at the point where I was holding a gun to my head, and I was just like,
Wow.
I don't want to be here, you know. And and something snapped in me, and I stopped, and I was like, dude, I'm, like I don't like where I'm at. Like, you know, I have to make a change. There is no other option. And so it was a long, hard road, but I walked that road, right? And so, but I had to hit that rock bottom, and I had to hit the rock bottom in order for me to get to a point to where I was like, yeah, I can do this. But how do we, as heroes or guides or coaches or whatever, how do we inspire people to make that change without allowing them to hit their rock bottom first? Maybe create a false rock bottom, because everyone's rock bottom's different, right? You
Yeah.
know?
Um, I see it from the other angle. Like rather than looking at a rock bottom, you need to find a reason why you're doing something that's bigger than your reasons not to do it. Because you can either go two directions here. You can go to the rock bottom where you push to a point of something has to change because you can't take it anymore,
Yeah.
or you can have something driving you that's so big that you have to follow through. Like for some people, that's their business. For some people, it might be their kids, their relationship, whatever it is. You need to find something that motivates you, that you want to get out of bed in the morning and take action on it. It's all about turning in the other direction and just figuring out, you know what, this is what I really want. This is the life I want to be living. I'm going to make a choice and nothing's going to stand in my way. Like, so it depends on the individual, but rather than go for the pain angle of wanting to put someone through some like trauma or some challenging event that forces them to change, find a way to inspire them that makes them want to do it.
No, it's absolutely yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. Um finding that reason, man, I think it's all about messaging and marketing too, right? Because like you want to reach a wide audience, you want to try to help as many people as possible. So that's why you write books, right? Is to get your message out there, is to try to inspire people through that medium. Okay, I don't know if you what you do on social media. I haven't checked your social media profile, so maybe you do social media content too. You do reels, you do posts, whatever, try to inspire people. But it's like how do you get that message just right to where people see it and they're like, huh, and it like clicks something in them to where they go back and look in their own life and their own mind, and they start to find those things that makes them want to change, to find what's so important in their life that they're willing to make a change, or willing to not tolerate their current behaviors any longer.
Yeah. The piece of advice I give to anyone listening to this is it's going to be different for everyone. So if I share mine as an example,
Mhm.
like the thing that drives me is after my dad's cancer and looking at how much time I wasted in my own life, I realized that the harsh reality is far too many people are going to wake up at 65. They're going to look back at the life that they could have lived, the chances they didn't take, and they're going to be thinking, what if? And that's why for me, what's far more terrifying than failure, than rejection, than not getting it right is regret. And that's my biggest driving force is that fear of reaching the end of my days, looking back, regretting what I didn't do, and realizing I can never get that time back. Like that's the thing that motivates me to keep pushing. And this is why anyone listening needs to do some soul searching to really figure out like what actually means something to you. What is something that's so big that it pushes you to actually start following through? For me, it's regret. For someone else, it might be providing a life for their family. It might be changing the world. Whatever it is, there's no right or wrong, but you need to figure out what is it that actually motivates you to want to get you to change the situation that you're in.
Yeah. And another piece of that is that I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were saying that there was this millionaire that all he wanted to do is become a millionaire, and then once he hit millionaire, all he did was he wanted to be 20 again. He would have given up all his money to be 20 again. You know, and it's just like, dude, it doesn't like honestly. Sometimes it doesn't matter because and what I took away from it was there's so many people that aren't enjoying the present moment and aren't spending time being the best version of themselves and like showing up every day and being present and just enjoying life really. Like does money help? Believe me, yeah, money helps a lot, you know, because you if you're poor and it usually causes unhappiness. When you're unhappy, then you fall into vices, over, you know, binge watching, overeating, overconsumption of alcohol, drugs, etc., which keep you in that spot, and they keep this is vicious cycle, right? But um, but really, I think what it is a um, it's a certain presence that you can have in the present moment.
Yeah. Like this, I absolutely love what you're talking about because this is actually the final chapter of my book. It's like basically taking someone on a journey till they can get to a point where they can finally find happiness. And the message I give in the book is all about recognizing that happiness doesn't come from some achievement off in the future.
Yeah.
Instead, happiness comes from the journey, and the journey takes place in the present. And that's why it's amazing having big goals and ambitions. But if you don't learn to slow down, your life is going to pass you by and you're never actually going to enjoy your success.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this is where we can all become our own worst enemies, because I think every person listening to this is no doubt guilty of saying that once they reach that next goal, that
Then
next
they'll be happy.
milestone, then they'll be happy. Then they'll take time off. Then they'll spend more time with their family. They'll focus on their health. But isn't that what you said the time before and the time before that? And it's just recognizing that, yes, you want to achieve all these incredible things, but if you don't slow down and enjoy the process, then what's the point?
Mhm.
Like life just passes by and you don't actually get the fulfillment that's needed. And this is why I work with a lot of CEOs and people who are running billion-dollar businesses, but they're miserable because they've sacrificed everything to get to where they are. And yes, they've got money in the bank, but they hate what they're doing. Their businesses are drained, their marriage has fallen apart, their kids don't want to speak to them. And they're just like, what is the point in this? And that's why, like you said, money is important because if you've got financial stress and you're worried about how you're going to make ends meet, obviously that's going to be difficult. But it's just recognizing of, okay, beyond that, what do you need to do to actually enjoy life?
Just find joy, and joy and peace and happiness come from within, not from the external.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question quickly,
Yeah,
because this is something that I answer in the book. I'm always really curious. You're obviously very dialed in on this. What for you is the definition of happiness?
that's good. That's a good question. Um, so I believe that happiness comes from progress in any area of life, or just progress. Period. So, for instance, um, you're a kid and you get put into pee wee soccer, and as you play and you do it, like, you enjoy it, but it doesn't really make you happy, like, but you enjoy it, right? And as you start to get good and you practice more and more, you realize where you started and you realize where you are, and your mind kind of makes the connection of the progress that you've made, which makes you happy. and throws you into it even more. And you start doing it more and more and more. Or if you take up a new hobby, right? You're like, I wanted to play guitar my whole life. So you start playing guitar, you practice every day. If you practice every day at anything, you're gonna get progress, right? That progress is gonna bring you happiness because there's some accomplishment there, but there's something there that you see growth within yourself. If you never go to the gym and you start going to the gym and you do that every single day, you're gonna start getting progress on your body, right? Move more, eat less, drink more water, you're going to start losing weight and you're going to get progress, right? So I used to be super skinny. I used to be like Ethiopian thin, right? Hard to imagine probably. But I can show you pictures, but I have this old picture when I first in the military, and I was so skinny that I was 80 pounds light, 75 pounds lighter than I am now.
Wow.
And I'm 6'7". I'm a tall guy. So when I started lifting consistently and I started taking in the right amount of calories, I started being focused on it. I didn't like it at first, but when I started to grow and I started to see the difference in the mirror, my strength, I was happy to do the process. I enjoyed the process. I found happiness and confidence in myself that I didn't have anymore or I didn't have previously. Right. And then people started to notice it. And the more people noticed it, the more other people noticed that progress, the more it made me happy to do those actions, even though it's like I'm going to the gym every day and I'm basically putting myself in a painful situation of ripping my muscles, right? Of breaking them down to build them back up. But I knew what the end state was. I knew that progress that was going to come, which made me happy to do it. And so ultimately, I think that happiness comes from progress from within, like it recognized progress within.
I love it. Like that's so aligned with my definition because like that's where I get to with the book. It's like for me, happiness is becoming the best version of yourself. It's knowing that you took the actions to push yourself to get better. And
Yeah.
the reason why I love that definition is it grows with you because
Yeah.
as you progress through your life and you take on new goals and desires and things, you're going to evolve yourself. So it's not some set definition where you need this to be happy. It's really just moving along as you actually start creating the life that you want. So
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. And what people don't realize a lot of times is that they're like, "Oh, I can't do that." Especially if they like. So so I have my coaching company, and then I have my financial services, like my insurance company that I've had for a little longer. So I have agents in the company, and they look at me like, "Oh, I couldn't do what Greg does." It's just like, no, you could. Like I started. Believe me, if you looked at me where I started to now, you'd be like, "Oh shit, I could do that." And I try to tell them like, I'm not special. I'm not special. What I did, anybody could do. And you're not special, but the power in that and us both not being special is that we both have the same opportunity, right? And it makes an even playing field, whoever's just willing to do it, right? And so when people see that, they don't realize that every single time that you put yourself into a challenging, a difficult, a hard situation, you take that hard right over the easy wrong. What you're doing is you're trying to hit your potential, right? So your potential, when you first start, here you are, here's your potential. You try to reach your potential, and what happens is that you improve yourself a little bit. You get some skill, you get some progress, but then your potential pushes out. And then you're like, "Oh wow, I can actually do a little better." So then you start doing the work and you start doing the work, and as you do work, you get better and better and better, but then your potential pushes out. And it just this process keeps pushing because everyone's potential is unknown and unlimited. And every single time that
Mm,
you try to reach and try to stretch and try to really push yourself to hit that potential, you increase your performance, you put yourself, you get that progress, you get more happiness and joy, but then your potential goes even further. And then what happens over time is that you start to get this like obsession to see how far can I go? Right? Like how good can
yeah.
I get? And it just changes you and it makes you like you enjoy the process. I know when I go to the gym that I'm gonna get sweaty, it's gonna be hard, I'm gonna be out of breath, I'm gonna be sore, right? All these things. I know those things are gonna happen, but I enjoy it. Like I like when I get done with the gym and I like being sore. Like if a day where I like really worked hard and like it's hard to walk or whatever, because then I'm like, dude, I'm gonna grow so much more from this.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
The thing I really want to add into that though is everything you're talking about, you're doing it for you.
Mhm.
Whereas going back to the people that you were saying who look at you and saying like, I can't do that. Their problem is they're comparing themselves to everyone else.
Yeah.
And you don't know what someone's gone through to get to where they are. Like people look at someone like you or on LinkedIn or Instagram, they're like, oh, that person's got it all together, or they've got this amazing success, but they overlook that it took 10 years to get there.
Yeah.
And it's just this instant gratification mindset that then people talk themselves out of it. And this is why you have to get tunnel vision. Like you need to figure out what you want and block out everyone else, because what other people are doing is irrelevant. And if that is something that causes you to doubt yourself or overthink, again, it's going to stop you from reaching your potential. So that's why I love how you described it, because everything you talked about there was about you. It was like you doing it for yourself and you wanting to get better. You didn't make a single mention about, I want to do it to get as big as that person. I want to build a business bigger than anyone else. It was all about your vision. I see so many people getting this wrong because they go into it for the wrong reasons,
Yes.
or they just make mistakes along the way because they get so much into assumptions and then they feel bad about their own progress. Whereas there is no timeline. There's nothing saying that you need to achieve this by this date. It's all just an expectation you're putting on yourself.
Mhm.
And so many people that just go back to being their own worst enemy.
It's the infinite game, man. It's like Simon Sinek's The Infinite Game. Like you have to realize that life is the infinite game, right? And your progress, your happiness, your joy, anything you want to do in life is the infinite game. You continue the game until you run out of the will or the resources to play the game. And so the point of the game is to play as long as possible. The point of the game is to make sure that you're maintaining the will and you're continuing to pour in resources to grow your resources to stay in the game as long as possible. Right? Too many people are trying to play it by a finite rule set, which means like me versus you. With a finite game, like basketball, you have one player versus another player, and those two players are going head to head. There's definitive rules on how they engage in the game. There's a start time, there's an end time, right? And then there's points, and at the end, there's a winner and there's a loser. With an infinite game, there's an infinite amount of players. You don't know who the players are. There is no endpoint. There is no winning. It's just playing the game as long as you can play. The problem is that when people try to play infinite game rules or infinite game with finite rules, that's when they lose. People are trying to play by a finite mindset by comparing to another person, to other players on the field. But you don't do that. And when it comes to business, we see this in business all the time, right? We see this when Blockbuster tried to play by a finite rule set against Netflix. What happened? Blockbuster doesn't exist.
Yeah. It's such good points that you're making. And I think there's so many valuable things here that people listening to us really need to take away, because so many people think that the game's over when it's only just begun.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I spoke to a CEO the other day. He was like, I'm getting old. Like, I need to start getting this in order. And the guy was 29. I was just like, you've only just started your life. Like, you're in such a rush to like do all of these things, and you're just putting like such unnecessary pressure on yourself. But because he sees all of these other people and what's going on, he's just getting stuck in his own head. And
Yeah.
that's why you really need to understand that life is long. Like you have so much more time than you realize, and that's why if you're just constantly rushing to make things happen, that's where you're going to make short-sighted decisions. Whereas the people who are actually willing to take a step back and be like, you know what, I'm in this for the long haul. I want to actually achieve these things, and I don't care if it happens in a week or a year. Their patience is actually what allows them to succeed long term. So you've got to balance that big ambitions with the self-awareness to be like, you know what, this is going to take time, and that's okay. But also, like we said before, there is no end result. There's not going to be a point where you're just going to wake up and be like, cool, I'm done now. Because chances are, if you're listening to the show, you're a high achiever, and the day you retire is the day that you become forever bored.
Yeah. I actually had a really interesting conversation in one of my last podcasts that I recorded, and the woman was saying that she had she was a coach also, and she was like, I talked to she actually coached celebrities on Pilates, and so she was like, I was talking to this one celebrity that was like really big, and she didn't name any names, but she was like, you know, this person told her, she was like, it was a unique concept, never heard of it, but she was like, it's so true, is that we aren't meant to retire as people. Like we aren't meant to just stop, because then we just start to die. And it's the people that like find a passion in life. Does that mean you have to work at the same company for the rest of your life? No. But your life's in phases. So you have like your first trimester of your life, which is all learning and growing and kind of becoming the person you're going to be. The next is like applying that to your life, building something, creating something great, doing whatever. Maybe you work for a company or you become an entrepreneur, you own a business, whatever. And then basically defining what your passion is and what your purpose is in life. And then your last phase of life, your last trimester is like executing in that purpose and that passion as you've built it over this lifetime, and you just don't stop until the day that you pass. And it's the people, and if you really look at it, like a lot of the people that live a long healthy life and like live into like the 90s over past 100, those people never stopped. They didn't retire. It's like, well, 65 retiring age, boom. How many people I've met and I've talked to so many people that hit that retiring age and then like 10 years later they die
Yeah.
because they don't have anything to live for.
But one thing I just like, I know there's probably people listening to this right now who are like, yeah, but I don't know what my passion is and I don't know what that purpose is. And so many people get this wrong. They think if they sit around meditating, it's going to come out of nowhere and just hit them in the
Action.
face.
You
And it's
gotta
just
take
like,
action.
if you don't know what you enjoy, it just means you haven't tried enough things.
Yeah.
Like you need to put yourself out there. Like if I use myself as a perfect example, like growing up, I hated doing sports. Like
Mhm.
when it came to do PE at school, I was always the person who never wanted to get involved. I saw the gym as for people I didn't want to be like, and it wasn't for me. So I wrote that off as an avenue, as something that I could ever have as a part of my life. And then after my dad's cancer, I realized, you know what, I need to get my health on track. I remember the first time I went into the gym, I went to the weight area and there was all these big guys like grunting and staring at their biceps. And I talked myself out of it. I was like, it's too busy right now. I'm going to go home and come back later. And luckily I did, because I once I got through that first workout and then the next, I started just getting into it. And then I started to see changes. And I was like, oh, well, if I want to do this, I want to do it properly. I started learning about nutrition and exercising. And a few months later, I found a passion in something that I never could have imagined. Like I
Yeah.
lost over 50 pounds. I went and wrote my first best-selling book. I started a company working with people from around the world to get control of their lives. None of that would have happened if I didn't push myself to become uncomfortable and go to the gym.
This is so
Like that was the
powerful.
catalyst that everything was stemmed
This
off of.
That is so powerful. And that's so true, man. I'm telling you, fitness is the gateway drug to personal development. It's the easiest thing to change in your life. It's hard to change mindsets sometimes. It's even hard to grow spiritually and become spiritually aligned with your purpose, your passion, your life. It's really difficult if you're not on the right path. And just like you said, just meditating and wishing for it is not going to happen. It takes action. But you know what's really easy to change is your body. You know why? Because everybody knows how to do it. And there's a plethora of information. Move more, eat less, drink more water. It's that
Yeah.
simple, right? And like, get your nutrition on point. It's not hard. Get your physical fitness on point. You know, it starts somewhere. You started somewhere and you got it, right? But you found that passion over time. And it's literally it's that. And then I'm sure as you went through this transformation process, you started transforming your body, your mind started to change too. Your mind was like getting confidence. It was building discipline. It was getting aligned with who you were, your higher level self. It was creating faith in your mind because you had faith in yourself. Because you said, hey, when I'm going to go to the gym, when I'm going to go work on myself, I'm a man of my word. I'm going to do it. Right. And now you started to believe in yourself. You have that faith, which now has a transcendent effect to your spiritual side, and everything starts to change. And it started with just going to the gym.
Yeah. The one thing I'd add to that as well that you didn't mention is like going to the gym also builds consistency
Mhm.
because it doesn't happen overnight. If you want to get the body you want, you have to show up, you have to put in the work, you've got to do the actions that you're not going to see an overnight change. It's going to take weeks or months. There's going to be actions you're going to need to take that no one else is even going to be aware that you're doing.
Yeah.
But slowly after over time, that's how you're going to get results. It's the same for building a business. It's the same for advancing your career, learning a new skill. You have to build that discipline and consistency. Where again, this is where people get it wrong. Like they build up in their mind, if they're not amazing from day one or they don't get the result instantly, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
There's actually nothing that you're great at ever happened to you in an instant. it took practice. It took you showing up, you putting yourself through it, and that's how you got better. So I think we really need to set realistic expectations with ourselves, because while it's great to really want to push yourself to grow, you have to balance that with being like, you know what, it's going to take time. I need to develop my confidence, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And you're so right. And you have to put in the reps, right? Not to make it a workout time, but you do. You got to put in the reps, right? Like for instance, this recording for the Be the Difference podcast is like, I think I'm on recording. I can look it up. I think I'm on like recording 140, episode 140. Okay. Um, It'll be like episode 137, I think. So there's 137 episodes of Be the Difference that I've recorded. Prior to this, I recorded 100 plus episodes of another podcast. So I've recorded a lot of podcasts. I've had a lot of conversations with people on camera. I feel very comfortable doing it, right? I feel very comfortable hosting a podcast. If you look at my first podcast and you watch me, I'm stuttering and stammering all over the place. I sound stupid. And I'm like, that looks terrible. Like, I don't know how to have that conversation or engage with people, right? But it took for me to just be like, I'm doing it. I'm just doing it, whatever, right? And over time, I got a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And now I love doing this. I love sitting with people like you, Byron, or any of the other podcast guests I have, and just having a conversation and learning and growing with you on this journey that we're currently having in this very moment.
Yeah. I love that mentality. And the thing that I would just pass on to anyone listening to this is just stop overthinking it. Like, part of the reason people don't take action is they just get too caught up in the vision of where they're trying to get to. So they look at, oh, I need to start this podcast. I need to launch this brand. I need to run that marathon, all these big things. And it's just so daunting that they just don't take action. And that's why I'm such a big believer of, yes, have a big goal and vision, but break it down. Like, what is the first thing you need to do? Record that first episode, put out that first video, get that first workout in, whatever it is, just break it down into small steps. Because when you do, that's how you build momentum. That's how your confidence goes up. It's how you improve. And then 4, 6, 8 weeks down the line, you've made this huge change and you haven't felt like you've gone crazy, which is far better than what most people do. Is they just sit there paralyzed by fear of like, I'm not going to be able to do that. And then months pass and they've still made no progress.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Is that paralysis by analysis? It's like the busy work. It's like, oh yeah, I'm starting a podcast. Okay. What are you doing? What's your podcast on? Well, I'm getting all the equipment first. I'm doing this, that, the other. Dude, when I started my podcast, when someone was like, you should start a podcast, I was like, all right, dope. I didn't know anything about it. I literally opened up my webcam. I used the speaker from my camera or from my computer, and then I just hit record on Zoom. And then I started talking. That was
That's
it.
all you need, though.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't need to be fancy. Like, so many people think that like they need to make it all shiny and like all polished, but
They
it's
want
like,
they want it to be
no.
the Joe Rogan show, and they haven't even started doing podcasting yet.
So much of it though is fear, because
Yeah.
so many people convince themselves, oh, it's not going to be perfect, so I need to have that yet in place first. Whereas
Yeah.
actually, if you look at perfectionism, like, all it is a fear of people are going to judge you. You're not going to be good enough. You're going to fail. So you convince yourself you're not ready yet to avoid facing it. And
Yep.
that's why so many people put perfectionism up on a pedestal, not recognizing it's the very thing holding them back. And that's why I'm such a believer in taking imperfect action. Because when you put yourself out there, that's how you learn and improve. Because I bet by episode 10, you were like, okay, this is how I need to talk. This is how I need to record it. Like, every single one, you got a little bit better.
Mhm.
And then 100 in, you're like, second nature.
Yeah. You just get used to it. And then on the way, I learn little things. Like, I talk to somebody that also does podcasts. They're like, oh, you should do this. And I'm like, huh, I never thought about that. And then I apply it. I'm like, ooh, that works a little bit better. Right. Hey, you should try using this for your camera. Or hey, you should use this for your microphone. That sounds really, really good. Like, I got a Rodecaster. I didn't get a Rodecaster until I recorded like close to 150 episodes total in my entire like podcasting time. So I'd already been recording the Be the Difference podcast for a while before I got a Rodecaster. And so I was like, but it's, man, it sounds smooth as butter, right? And it sounds really good. Before I had a Blue Yeti just like yours, but it was just a blue one, just a USB hookup, right? And then I was like episode 50 recording it before I got a ring light, and I was like, Man, that makes such a difference on my face. Like now I don't look all shadowed, you know? It's small little things and they happen over time because you're focused on the actions that you're doing, right? Those imperfect actions and just taking action, it helps tune your RAS of this is what's important to me in my life because this is what I'm taking action on. And so it starts to scan the world for everything that's important to you, right? And for those of you that don't know, RAS is your reticular activating system. All of us have it. It's in our brain. It's basically like the bouncer that's in your head. Okay. For all the thousands of pieces of data and information and everything that your brain can soak up in the environment at any given time, it's the bouncer that keeps all the unimportant information out of your mind. And it focuses on four things. There's four things that your bouncer will let into your mind. The first thing is the sound of your name. Your name. So if you notice, like if anyone says Byron in public, they could be a whisper, and you're gonna be like, "Someone call me." Like you just know, right? Your brain picks that up very quickly. The second thing is danger. If there's something that's danger, that is within a relative close area. So like that's why they Spider-Man has like spider sense. We technically have found something very similar because our brains pick up a lot in our peripherals and everything surrounding. That's why sometimes you'll be taking a walk at night and you'll be like, I got an eerie feeling there's somebody behind me, and you look and there is, and you're like, ugh, like, okay, I'm gonna take this route instead and see if this person follows me or whatever. So it's anything that could be a potential danger. The third is if someone's interested in us. So if we feel that there's someone, or if our brain's picking up that someone's interested in us, we will hone in on that. Right. And the last is things that we feel are important to us. So if you're constantly feeling and talking to yourself and like, man, it's too late, I can't do it, or man, I don't want to I can't do what they do. Like I hear what you're saying, but like my situation's different. And that's because what you're doing is you're telling yourself your situation's what's important to you. That pitfall that you're falling into, that rut that you're laying into, you're telling that's what's important to you. So that's what your life, that's what your RES is going to bring more of into your life. But when you're like, you know what, I'm going to make a change. Damn, I'm making a change. I'm going to start recording podcasts. I'm going to record because I'm going to record on friggin' English Victorian dolls because I love them and I have a collection and I want to talk about them. And you just start talking about it. I promise you, there's someone out there that wants to listen. I guarantee it. Okay. It may not be the hugest community, but there's a niche market, right? So you start talking about it, and now you find that you really like talking on podcasts, and that's what your brain's focused on. That's what your RES is tuned to. So you're going to start scanning the world for like ways to make the podcast simpler, easier, more efficient, look better, etc. And you'll find it just by doing those actions because you've now told you've hacked your RES. Like, this is important to me.
The thing I'd just love to add to that, though, is what you need to understand if you're listening to this is your brain doesn't want you to succeed. Like it's been programmed in a way that it wants to survive. It doesn't want to thrive. Like it wants to keep everything the same types of relationships, the same amount of weight on your body, the same amount of wealth, happiness, and joy. Good. The reason being is everything in your past has been survived. Meaning it's far safer than anything new, whereas your goals, your dreams, your ambitions, they're all new. So they bring with an inherent risk. And this is why your brain fills your head with all these sabotaging thoughts. What if you fail? You're too late. You're not good enough. You get rejected because it wants to keep you where you are. Because even though you might be unhappy, it takes comfort in what it knows. It can predict that you're going to survive for long term. And this is why you have to understand that that voice isn't real. It's just there in a way that wants to keep you where you are, whereas the life you want is on the other side of that fear. But if you don't start putting yourself out there, you're never going to see who you can become.
That is so true. It's because that is what's called your egoic mind. Your egoic mind that is always analyzing your emotions. And it's producing emotions to keep you in that state, but it's always analyzing your past. And it's keeping you in the past. It's keeping you in that cycle, that rut, because you're right, because you've already survived it. It's comfortable.
Yeah. That's why that's the entire introduction to my new book. It's like talking about like why are you actually sabotaging yourself? Like what is happening that's causing you to get in your own way? Because until you get that awareness and you figure out, okay, what is holding you back, you're not going to be able to change it. Like awareness is the first step towards making progress. So you just need to understand like your doubts and your fears, while they are maybe legitimate, at the end of the day, they're just a story you're telling yourself. It's something that's programmed into your head to keep you where you are. And when you start challenging those stories and fears and recognizing that you can actually break through them, that's when you become unstoppable.
Yeah. And what's when does your book get released?
It's at June 27th.
Okay, so by the time this airs, his book release, because this airs in August. So by the time this airs, his book will be released. I definitely highly recommend that you guys go buy his book. Go check this out, because I can already tell, like, just by this conversation, that this is going to be an amazing book. Like, I'm excited for you. I'm really excited for you. Or your 4th bestseller.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait to share it with the world. It's basically everything I've learned over the last decade of what it takes to help someone get out of their own way. And I broke it down. And yeah, I'm so excited to get out there and to get in front of people.
That's amazing. I love it. If anyone's watching this and they're like, "Man, Byron's a dope dude. I really like his take and the way he explained things, and I want to learn more about him, or I want to follow him to see if he has got content, or just connect with them." What's the best place to connect with you?
So my website, byronmorrison.com, or I'm active on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Um,
Just search for author Byron Morrison. I put out daily videos and posts and just anything I can to help people actually take control of their lives.
nice. I love this. And the last question I ask all my guests is: you have the opportunity, Byron, to sit with, learn from, have a conversation with, or even break bread with 3 individuals, anyone in history, alive or deceased. Who would they be and why?
That's a great one. I'd say the first one would probably be Mike Matthews. Like he wrote a book called Bigger, Leaner, Stronger.
Mhm.
And going back to what we were talking about earlier about fitness, like that was the book that changed my life because that was the first book I ever read about exercise. That was the book that actually ultimately inspired me to want to become an author. Like that was like the game changer for me. The other one is probably my biggest hero of all time is Tom DeLonge from Blink 182. I just think that'll be
That's a
an
good one.
yeah, he's like out of everyone beyond my parents, I'd say he's probably the person who's had the biggest impact on my life. Like he was like the inspiration for my entire childhood. And then probably Warren Buffett.
That's a
Like
good one. That's a good one.
absolute yeah, I like the guy's an absolute genius. Like he's just changed the financial game and I'd love to like learn from those are just 3 off the top of my mind that come in. I'm sure there's some other past and present ones, but yeah, they're 3 people I'd love to just sit down with.
I love that. Those are 3 great ones. Byron, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it. I know this is going to be a lot of value for everyone that watched. And if you're watching till now, I know you got value out of it. Okay. So I want you to do 2 things. I'm asking you for 2 favors. The first favor I'm asking for is I want you to go pick up, maybe you should give up 7 Ways to Get Out of Your Own Way and Take Control of Your Own Life by Byron Morrison. Go check out his book. Go get out of your own way. Because if you're watching this, you're a high achiever, like he said, and you want to take it to the next level, no matter what level you're at. And the second way you can do that, or the second favor I have is I want you to go share this content with another person that can also learn, that can grow, that can evolve, that can change their perspective by watching this content. It means the world to both Byron and I when you can share his content, and you might actually change another life, but just by doing so. But it takes you 60 seconds to rate, review, subscribe, and share. It's really quick for you. It means everything to us. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you.